The afternoon light spilled through the glass roof of North Point Mall, scattering patterns across the marble floor like ripples of gold. The place smelled of expensive perfume and polished ambition, that mix of air conditioning and money that only luxury spaces seemed to master. Langston Reed adjusted his cufflinks, subtle silver against dark skin, and walked in slow, deliberate steps toward the store that bore his silent ownership, North Point Jewels. He had founded it 10 years ago, built it from a single boutique into a national brand. But today, he wasn't walking in as the CEO. He was walking in as an ordinary man, dressed in jeans, a black polo, and sneakers. No entourage, no security, no announcement. He wanted to see how people were treated when no one knew who they were. Through the crystal glass doors, North Point Jewels shimmered with white light. Every display case gleamed like it contained a star. Diamonds winked beneath soft spotlights. The air inside was chilled, silent, and almost sacred. 2 attendants stood behind the counters, rehearsed smiles in place. One of them, Alyssa Beck, was arranging diamond necklaces with gloved fingers, her posture perfect, her expression colder than the stones she handled. The other, a younger trainee named Mia, watched her every move with the nervous energy of someone who still cared about doing things right. Langston stepped inside. A faint bell chimed above him. Alyssa's eyes flicked up immediately, assessing. Her gaze moved from his face to his shoes, then to the plain wristwatch he wore. Not designer, not gold, just metal and leather. Her judgment was swift, invisible, and final. "Good afternoon, sir," she said with a tone that was technically polite but chemically devoid of warmth. "Are you looking for something specific today?" Langston smiled. "Just browsing," he said softly. His voice carried that calm, deliberate rhythm that powerful men learn early in life, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. He walked slowly along the cases, his eyes moving across the rings, watches, and necklaces. Each piece held memories of boardroom approvals, design sketches, sleepless nights. He knew the cost of every gem, not just in dollars, but in dreams. Yet today, he wanted to see if the people selling those dreams understood their own worth, or the worth of the people they served. Alyssa followed him from a distance, whispering something to Mia. The younger girl frowned, then whispered back. Langston caught fragments. "Keep an eye on him." The words didn't sting, not yet, but they registered. A familiar pattern. He'd lived it before, in boardrooms, airports, and restaurants. The suspicion that followed certain skin tones like an unpaid debt. He stopped before a display of engagement rings, a halo-cut diamond that caught the light just right. He leaned closer, admiring the craftsmanship. Without thinking, he lifted the lid of the case to see the piece better. It wasn't locked, deliberately so, for customers to try. He picked up the ring gently, turning it in his fingers. That's when Alyssa's heels clicked sharply against the marble. "Sir, please don't touch that," she said, voice tight and loud enough to draw glances from 2 nearby customers. "Those pieces are extremely valuable." Langston looked up, calm. "I understand," he said. "I was just admiring the cut." "That's fine," Alyssa said, stepping closer. "But I'll have to ask you to put it down." Her tone had changed. Less customer service, more command. He placed the ring back carefully. "There you go." But Alyssa didn't move. Her eyes narrowed, scanning his hands. "I saw you slip something into your pocket," she said suddenly. Her voice rose a notch, slicing through the calm of the store. "Security!" The entire store froze. Mia's eyes went wide. "Ms. Beck, he didn't—" "Call security!" Alyssa snapped again, ignoring her. Langston stood perfectly still. No movement, no panic, just that quiet. Heavy disbelief that always comes when prejudice wears a familiar face. "Are you sure you want to do that?" he asked quietly. Alyssa folded her arms. "Yes, I'm sure. You need to empty your pockets right now." A few shoppers stopped pretending to browse. A woman gasped softly. A man pulled out his phone, recording. The air thickened with tension. Langston's calm became a performance, the kind of calm that men like him are forced to master, because anything else could be mistaken for aggression. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, clean, white, folded. He placed it on the counter. "That's all I have," he said evenly. Alyssa didn't blink. "I saw you take something," she insisted. Don't lie. Mia tried again. He didn't, Ms. Beck. I was watching. He just looked. Enough. Alyssa cut her off. Go get security. Mia hesitated, looked at Langston apologetically, then ran toward the door. Langston exhaled softly. You're making a mistake. No, Alyssa said sharply. You are. You think you can just walk into a store like this, handle diamonds like you own the place? He raised an eyebrow. Maybe I do, she scoffed. Sure you do. Moments later, 2 mall security guards appeared, one tall and burly, the other short and red-faced. They approached with cautious authority, the way people do when they believe they already know the ending. Sir, we need to check your pockets, the tall one said. Store manager reported a possible theft. Langston didn't move. Am I being accused of stealing? That's what we're here to determine. Alyssa stood behind them, arms crossed. I saw him take something from the case. Show us, sir, the guard said. Langston looked around. A dozen phones were pointed at him now. Customers. Pretending to scroll while recording every second. He thought of how the footage would look online, a black man surrounded by security in a jewelry store. Context stripped. Judgment immediate. He sighed, then took out his phone. Fine, he said. But before I do, can I show you something first? The taller guard frowned. Depends on what it is. Langston tapped his phone screen. It unlocked with facial recognition. A few swipes later, he turned it around, showing the screen to the guards. The logo shimmered in silver and black, North Point Holdings, Inc. Beneath it, a live dashboard displayed store sales, employee performance, and live camera feeds from every branch across the country. The guards blinked. Alyssa frowned. What is this supposed to be? Langston tilted his head slightly. The control panel for my company. She laughed, short and sharp. Your company? Please, you expect us to believe that? At that moment, Mia returned, but not alone. With her came a man in a gray suit, carrying a tablet and wearing a corporate badge. He looked confused, scanning the tense scene. What's going on here? He asked, voice brisk but uneasy. Alyssa gestured toward Langston. This man was handling merchandise without permission. I think he took, and the man's words cut through her sentence like a blade. Mr. Reed. Silence. Alyssa froze. Wait. What? The suited man turned to Langston, his expression shifting instantly from confusion to alarm. Sir, I didn't realize you were visiting today. No one informed us. Langston finally smiled, faint but deadly calm. I didn't inform anyone. I wanted to see how customers are treated when no one's watching. The crowd's murmurs filled the room like wind before a storm. Phones lifted higher. Mia stepped back, tears glinting in her eyes, not from guilt, but from relief. Alyssa's face went pale. You're the owner? Langston didn't answer immediately. He looked around the store, at the cases, the diamonds, the reflections. Then he looked back at her. The problem isn't that you didn't know who I was, he said. It's that you thought you did. The man in the suit cleared his throat awkwardly. Mr. Reed, I'll handle this immediately. Langston nodded slowly. No, let her speak, Alyssa stammered. I thought you were... You thought I didn't belong, Langston said. You thought someone who looks like me couldn't afford to be here. That's the real theft that happens in places like this. You didn't steal from me. You stole your own decency. Her mouth opened but no words came. The guard stepped aside, embarrassed. The customers looked at one another, unsure where to rest their gaze. Langston put his phone back into his pocket and straightened his shirt. I'll be in my office, he said to the man in the suit. We have some policies to review. As he turned to leave, one of the guards muttered softly, I'm sorry, sir. Langston paused at the door. Don't be, he said. Just make sure you never stand on the wrong side of a story again. He walked out, his footsteps echoing against the polished floor. Behind him, silence swallowed the store. Outside, the whispers began to spread, the way wildfire spreads when it meets dry grass. That was the owner, someone said. The CEO himself. Did you see her face? It's all over TikTok already. Langston didn't turn back. The glass doors closed behind him with a soft click. The world had seen enough, but for him, this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. The sound of the mall faded behind him as Langston Reed walked toward the elevator that led to the corporate suites above North Point Mall. His reflection in the glass doors looked calm, but inside, the silence in his chest was heavy. It wasn't anger that filled him. Not exactly. It was exhaustion. The kind that comes from living the same moment 100 times in different places, in different forms. He had spent years building empires, companies, and brands that preached inclusivity, luxury, and equality. But no matter how far he rose, the assumptions always found him. Quiet, sharp, and invisible, like shards of glass buried under snow. As the elevator rose, Langston looked down at his phone. Notifications flooded the screen, clips already going viral. Dozens of strangers were sharing the footage, tagging his company, calling for apologies. Some praised his composure. Others didn't even realize he was the owner. The internet had turned his humiliation into content, the modern court of public opinion, lit by screens instead of torches. The elevator chimed. Floor 7, North Point Corporate Headquarters. Langston stepped into the executive corridor, where walls gleamed with minimalist art and success stories framed in glass. A receptionist at the end of the hall looked up, startled, then quickly stood. "Mr. Reed," she said, voice trembling slightly. We didn't expect you today." "I didn't expect to need to come," Langston replied evenly. "Get me Alex Carter in HR and the regional director." "Yes, sir." He walked into his office, spacious, immaculate, overlooking the skyline. The city stretched beneath him, clean and ordered, like one of his blueprints brought to life. On his desk sat photos of his journey, his first store opening, his mother's proud smile, his graduation from Howard University. Every picture was proof that he had earned everything the world once said he couldn't. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," Langston said. Alex Carter entered first, mid-40s, HR director, known for her professionalism and loyalty. Behind her, the regional director Daniel Hayes followed, the same man who had recognized Langston downstairs. His collar was damp with sweat. "Sit," Langston said. "We have a problem." Alex nodded. "We saw the footage, sir. It's spreading fast. Over 2 million views in under an hour." Daniel swallowed. I had no idea you were coming in person today." "That's the point," Langston said quietly. "You shouldn't need to know. What I saw down there wasn't about me. It was about the culture in our stores, about how people like Alyssa think it's okay to judge a customer before they even speak." Daniel exhaled. "She's been with us for 5 years, top sales performer." "And that," Langston said, leaning forward, "is the problem. We reward results, not respect. Sales numbers mean nothing if they come from people who treat others like suspects." Alex opened a folder. "Do you want me to suspend her pending investigation?" Langston shook his head slowly. "Not yet. I want to see if she's willing to face what she did. Bring her up." Daniel hesitated. "Now." "Yes," Langston said. "Now." The air in the office thickened as they waited. Minutes later, the door opened again. Alyssa Beck entered, pale, shaken, but still trying to stand straight. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Mr. Reed, I had no idea." Langston raised a hand. "Don't start with that. Sit." She obeyed, perching on the edge of the chair like it might break under the weight of her guilt. Langston studied her for a long moment. "Tell me," he said, "why did you think I was stealing?" Alyssa's mouth opened, then closed. "You were looking at the rings. You picked one up. It's store policy too." "No," he interrupted softly. "That's not what I asked. I said, why did you think I was stealing?" Her eyes darted away. I don't know. You didn't look like most of our customers." There it was. The truth, raw and unfiltered. Langston leaned back, his voice low and steady. "Do you know who designed the interior of that store? Who approved every display case and lighting angle?" Alyssa shook her head. "I did," he said. "Do you know whose initials are engraved inside the diamond rings you sell?" Her lips parted. "Yours?" He nodded. "Every product in that store carries my mark, the same mark you looked at and still couldn't see." Tears welled in her eyes. "I made a mistake." Langston tilted his head slightly. "A mistake is spilling coffee on a counter. What you did was judgment. You saw a black man in casual clothes and assumed criminal intent. Do you know how many times I've lived this exact scene? In airports, car dealerships, boardrooms, even at my own gala once. Every time I stay calm, and every time I tell myself it'll change. But it doesn't. Alyssa wiped her eyes. I'm not racist, sir. I swear I'm not. He looked at her, tired, almost sympathetic. That's what everyone says when they get caught acting like one. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke the air. Alex Carter looked down at her papers. Daniel stared at the floor. Only the city's hum outside dared to move. Langston stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the mall below. The store looked small from up here, a glittering box full of human flaws. Do you know what's worse than racism, Alyssa? He asked quietly. She sniffed. What? Denial. It lets people like you sleep comfortably after destroying someone else's peace. Alyssa broke down then. Not dramatically, just quietly. Tears sliding down, shoulders trembling. Please, Mr. Reed, I'll resign. You'll do nothing, Langston interrupted. Not yet. You'll stay on the schedule until I decide what happens next. But you will take sensitivity training, and you will meet every employee you've ever mistreated and apologize to them face to face. Her eyes widened. Face to face? Yes, he said. You owe them that much. She nodded, speechless. Langston turned to Alex. Prepare a company-wide statement. I'm not letting social media define the narrative. We'll define it ourselves. Yes, sir, Alex said. How do you want to frame it? Langston's eyes darkened with purpose. Tell the truth, that the CEO of North Point Jewels was mistaken for a thief in his own store, that we acknowledge bias still exists, even in our own walls, and that we're going to do something about it. Daniel shifted nervously. Sir, won't that hurt our image? Langston turned to him, voice sharp as glass. Our image is already hurt. The only thing worse than a bad truth is a beautiful lie. Daniel looked down, chastened. Langston walked back to his desk, picked up a pen, and signed a document without looking at it. Then he looked at Alyssa one last time. You can go now. And Alyssa, next time you see someone who doesn't look like you, remember today before you open your mouth. She nodded, whispering, Yes, sir, before quietly exiting the room. The moment the door closed, Alex exhaled. You handled that with grace. Langston gave a faint, tired smile. Grace isn't for them. It's for me. I refuse to let their ignorance define my peace. He sat down heavily in his chair. Outside, clouds began to gather, casting the city in soft gray light. It mirrored his mood, not dark, but solemn. After a long pause, Alex asked, What now? Langston looked at his phone again, notifications still pouring in. A call from Bloomberg News, messages from CNBC, Forbes, CNN. The story had gone global in 2 hours. He turned the phone face down. Now, he said slowly, we turn this into power. Alex frowned. Power? He leaned back, his mind already racing ahead. This wasn't just an insult, it was an opportunity. The world just saw how quick people are to judge. Let's use that. We'll launch a new initiative. Diversity in luxury. Minority designers, black artisans, fair opportunities. We'll make this the story of change. Alex nodded slowly, impressed. That could redefine the brand. Langston smirked. It will. But that's not all. Daniel glanced up nervously. What else are you planning? Langston's smile deepened. Not cruel, just deliberate. I'm buying the mall. Daniel blinked. The mall? You heard me, Langston said. The entire North Point Mall, every square foot. I've been considering it for months. This just gave me the final push. Alex smiled faintly. You're turning humiliation into ownership. Langston chuckled softly. That's the only revenge that ever mattered. His phone buzzed again, a message from his legal team. Purchase offer ready for review. He looked out the window, watching the shoppers below. Tiny figures moving between stores that didn't know their world was about to change. He said quietly, mostly to himself, You can't control how people see you, but you can control what they have to look up to. Hours later, after most employees had gone home, Langston remained in his office. The city lights blinked like stars in a man-made sky. He replayed the moment in the store. The disbelief in Alyssa's eyes, the tension in his chest, the weight of being doubted in a place he built. He thought of his mother, a schoolteacher who used to tell him, "Don't get even, get better." He smiled faintly. That was exactly what he was doing. The intercom buzzed. "Sir?" It was Alex. "Your car's waiting downstairs." "Thank you," Langston said, standing. "Tell them I'll be down in a minute." He picked up his jacket, slipped his phone into his pocket, and looked around the office one last time. The skyline reflected on the glass behind him, merging his reflection with the city he ruled. As he stepped into the hallway, Daniel caught up with him. "Sir, one more thing. The press wants a statement directly from you. Should I decline for now?" Langston stopped at the elevator. "No," he said. "Let them wait. Sometimes silence is louder than a statement." He pressed the button. The doors slid open. Before stepping in, he looked back at Daniel. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "prepare the legal team. By noon, North Point Mall won't belong to the board. It'll belong to me." The elevator doors closed, sealing the promise. Downstairs, the mall still buzzed faintly. The jewelry store was empty now, its lights dimmed. Alyssa's desk stood deserted. Mia lingered near the entrance, staring at the reflection of the store name in the glass. Langston walked past her quietly. She looked up and whispered, "Mr. Reed?" He paused. "Yes?" "I just wanted to say, thank you for not yelling, for handling it the way you did. A lot of people would have just fired her and left." Langston smiled softly. "Sometimes the lesson is more valuable than the punishment." Mia nodded. "My mom used to say that." "Then she was a wise woman," Langston said. He turned and left, his footsteps echoing through the nearly empty mall. Outside, rain had begun to fall. Light, steady, cleansing. He stepped into it without hurrying, letting the drops cool the fire in his veins. He knew tomorrow would bring headlines, debates, and apologies. But tonight, there was only quiet vindication. He looked up at the glowing sign above the mall entrance, North Point Mall, and whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, that name changes." Then he got into his car and drove away, leaving the city lights shimmering behind him like diamonds in the rain. The next morning, the city awoke to headlines that didn't just report a story. They shook an entire industry. Black CEO buys entire mall. After being accused of theft, screamed every screen, every news banner, every phone notification. But for Marcus Reed, the man at the center of it all, this was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming dignity, rewriting the narrative that had been written for men who looked like him for generations. He stood in front of his floor-to-ceiling. Windows, coffee in hand, overlooking the same city that had once refused to sell him a store space because he didn't fit the image. Now he owned the entire building that sat across from his office, and within hours, he'd own the mall too. Justice had a strange way of circling back. Across town, the luxury mall buzzed with reporters, employees whispering, and customers pretending not to look as men in tailored suits moved in and out of the management offices. No one really knew what was happening, just that something massive was underway. Inside the executive conference room, Jonathan Pierce, the mall's general manager, sat nervously at the table, tie loosened, phone buzzing every few seconds. He'd gotten a call from his legal department early that morning. "Mr. Pierce, the acquisition papers are real. Reed Enterprises is buying out the entire property." He didn't believe it at first. Now he did. The doors opened, and Marcus walked in. No entourage this time, no reporters, no cameras, just him, confident, controlled, calm. Every executive in the room rose to their feet out of reflex. Jonathan tried to extend a handshake, but Marcus simply nodded and sat down. "Let's keep this short," Marcus said. "I have a store to redesign." The silence was heavy. One of the lawyers cleared her throat. "Mr. Reed, as of 9 a.m., the ownership of the Crestmont Mall has officially been transferred to Reed Enterprises. Congratulations." Applause filled the room, though it sounded forced, like people clapping for the storm that just took their house. Marcus smiled politely. "Thank you. But let's make one thing clear. I didn't buy this place to celebrate. I bought it to rebuild what pride looks like." His voice was even, but the words carried the weight of every injustice, every headline, every whisper of, "He doesn't belong here." He turned to Jonathan. "You remember me, don't you?" Jonathan nodded, embarrassed. Yes, Mr. Reed. From the store, Marcus finished. The one where your security guard called me a thief. Jonathan swallowed hard. I'm truly sorry about that. We never… Marcus raised his hand. Save it. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here for a correction. He leaned forward. That store, my store, will stay exactly where it is, but everything about this mall is about to change. The board members looked at one another. Marcus continued, voice steady. From now on, every shop assistant, every guard, every manager will go through cultural sensitivity and equality training, and I'll personally make sure that opportunity is open to everyone, not just the ones who look the part. He paused. And the guard who accused me? He's not fired. He'll be offered a chance to learn, to grow, to understand. People don't change through punishment. They change through education. That one sentence silenced the entire room. They expected vengeance. He gave them reform. Later that day, Marcus walked back into Echelon, the jewelry store that had started it all. The same marble floors, the same glass displays, but this time the air felt different. Employees stood straighter, customers whispered less, and in the center of it all, the same security guard, Dale, stood by the counter, visibly nervous. When Marcus approached, Dale lowered his head. Sir, I don't know what to say. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. Say nothing, just do better. Then, after a pause, he added quietly, we all make mistakes, but not all of us get the chance to fix them. You do. Dale looked up, eyes wet. Thank you, sir. Marcus smiled faintly. Thank yourself. You showed me what this place still needed. That evening, Marcus held a small press conference in the mall's grand atrium. The lights shimmered off the jewelry displays, the same space where humiliation had once echoed like a slap. This time, cameras clicked for a different reason. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. Yesterday, I was accused of stealing a bracelet. Today, I bought the place that sold it. Laughter rippled through the crowd. He smiled. But this isn't about ownership. It's about opportunity. He pointed to the workers behind him. This mall will now host new small businesses owned by minorities, women, and young entrepreneurs who've been told they don't belong in luxury spaces. Because they do. Applause thundered through the hall. Marcus looked around, not for approval, but for purpose. He saw faces that once turned away from him, now staring with respect. He saw the same walls that once confined him, now becoming symbols of change. And for the first time, he felt something deeper than pride. Peace. When the reporters asked if he'd rename the mall, Marcus smiled. No, he said. Some names don't need changing. Some meanings do. That line became the headline the next day. Within hours, it went viral. Millions of views, millions of shares, millions inspired. The clip of Marcus saying, some names don't need changing, some meanings do, became a mantra across social media, on shirts, in classrooms, in speeches. Back in his office, Marcus sat quietly as the sun dipped below the skyline. His assistant walked in with the final paperwork for the acquisition. Everything's done, sir, she said softly. You officially own it all. He nodded, eyes fixed on the city lights. I don't own it, he said finally. I just borrowed it from the next generation. She smiled. That's the most Marcus Reed thing you've ever said. He chuckled. Maybe, but let's make sure they don't forget why it mattered. He looked down at the small bracelet still sitting on his desk, the same one that had sparked the chaos. It glittered under the office light, not because of its diamonds, but because of what it represented, the moment a man turned humiliation into history. Outside, the mall's new digital billboard lit up with bold white letters. Owned by Reed Enterprises, open to everyone. And as the city's night came alive with energy, Marcus Reed leaned back, exhaled, and whispered to himself, let them remember what happens when you try to break a man who builds. The camera would have pulled back here, rising slowly through the cityscape, the mall glowing like a crown below him. A story that started with an accusation had ended with transformation, not revenge, not retribution, just redemption. Because power wasn't about owning the mall, it was about owning the moment.